Tony, and thanks to all of you. It's great to be here. It's a privilege to be with you right here today at the Values Voters Summit. I want to start this morning by telling you a story that I first heard from a man named Emo Phillips. Emo Phillips told a story about how he was walking across a bridge very late one night. It was late enough that there was no automobile traffic on that bridge. In fact, there was no one on the bridge at all, so he was able to walk in the middle of the bridge. It was a high bridge, a bridge that stretched over a large river. It was high enough that anyone who fell off of that bridge would not survive the impact, even if they landed in the water. As he got about halfway across the bridge, he saw a man standing on the outside of the guardrail, as if getting ready to jump. He knew, based on the height of the bridge, that the man wouldn't survive the fall, and he surmised that the man was contemplating ending his life. Determined not to allow this to happen, Emo Phillips stopped and engaged the man in conversation. He asked first if he were a believer, if he believed in God. The man said yes, and Emo said, "Me too." He said, "Are you a Christian?" The man said yes. Emo said, "Me too." He said, "What denomination are you?" And the man said, "Well, I'm a Baptist." And Emo said, "Me too." "Are you a Northern Baptist or are you a Southern Baptist?" He said, "Well, I'm a Northern Baptist." "Me too." "Are you a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist or Northern Reformed Baptist?" He said, "Well, I'm a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist." "Me too." "Are you a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1857 or Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1812? And he said, "Well, I'm Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1857. And I said, "Die, you heretic," and I pushed him on. You know, that should be a reminder to us all, as values voters. We have to remember that it's far more important to keep our eyes fixed on potential conservative converts rather than on finding heretics. You see, the principles that unite us are also the principles that help position us to win the hearts and the minds of voters across this great land. Too often in this town, we stop thinking about the things that matter most, and we get caught up in the thick and thin of things. So caught up that we not only stop thinking big, we often stop thinking at all, which leads to other problems like $17 trillion of debt, widespread government dysfunction, Obamacare, and much, much more. I want to tell you a story about my boys. I've got twin boys, 18 years old. Their names are James and John. These sons of thunder, as I sometimes call them, are good boys. They go to church, they read their scriptures, they're 4.0 students. On this particular day, we were listening to the radio in my car. We were listening to a song on the radio, a song we had heard many times, a popular song, but a song that I hadn't listened to very carefully in the past. All of a sudden, for one particular reason or another, I started listening to the words this day. And I realized that these words were not necessarily good. They were not the words that any God-fearing father of teenage boys would want his kids hearing. All of a sudden, I pointed out to them, this is a raunchy song. This is terrible. My son John, without batting an eye, said to me, "Dad, it's not bad if you don't think about it." All of a sudden, the horrific thought occurred to me, my son John must be advising the President of the United States. You see, a $17 trillion debt isn't bad, but only if you don't think about it. Adding to that debt at a rate of almost $1 trillion a year isn't bad if you don't think about it. And a massive government takeover of our healthcare system isn't bad if you don't think about it. If you do think about it, of course, all those things are horrible. If you do think about it, the very best argument against Obamacare is the president's conduct during the first 10 days of this shutdown. I mean, look what's happened. The president is using the vast, immense power of the federal government to hurt the American people. Why? In order to win a political argument. What happens then when we turn over some of the most private, intimate decisions in our lives, our healthcare system, to the government? When will that be used as a tool against us? We must stop it. We must defund it. We cannot accept it. My friend Ted Cruz and I, and along with a few others who have stood with us, by the way, I see my friend Rafael Cruz, Ted's father, here with us this morning. Thank you, sir, for sending a great son to Washington. Ted Cruz and I have been roundly criticized for our actions in the attempt to defund Obamacare. We make no apologies. We stand with you. We stand with the people. You know, you all are here today because you are thinking about it. Our party, my party, the Republican Party, is at its best when we're thinking about it. Unfortunately, some people succumb to the notion that we can't think deeply in the middle of big battles on heated issues. I say that this is exactly what we should be doing, and we should be doing it today and every day. Because when we stop and we come back home to being the party of big ideas, good things happen. Throughout our party's history, the bigger our ideas, the more we've succeeded. Ronald Reagan's conservative revolution, the 1994 contract with America, George W. Bush's compassionate conservatism, whatever you might think of any of the above, they all showed in their time that it's the ideas and the principles rather than the personalities or the discrete interest groups that unify the Republican Party and propel it both to electoral success and to governing success. Lately, it seems, we haven't had nearly enough of either. Some say it's because we need better candidates. Some say it's because we need a better message. Others say it's a dispute about tactics and strategy or even about technology. And certainly those things all play a part. But to my mind, what the party of ideas is really missing is ideas. For too long, Republicans have put off the difficult task of developing a modernized, principled, conservative reform agenda to meet many of the new challenges of the 21st century. There are many reasons why this is so, but I think the biggest of all is that in this city, conservatives often fall into a trap that involves defining ourselves by what we're against. We're against big government debt, higher taxes, higher regulations, and of course, well, Obamacare. We're against that. But perhaps we haven't invested nearly as much time and energy communicating what we as conservatives are for. I'm talking about more than simply the policies we advocate. Conservatism is not about the bills we want to pass. It's about the nation we want to be. As you know, for conservatives, politics is far more than just a means. It is an end. The real goal, what conservatives are really for, is not an agenda for government. It is a vision of society, a view of the world we want to build together. Together. That's a word, together, that's essential, and it's too often overlooked. It's part of what we as conservatives believe. We're all committed to bedrock principles of individual liberty, individual rights, and personal responsibility. But the very reason we fight for individual freedom is the strength, the vitality, and the value of communities that free individuals form. The alternative to big government is not just small government. The ultimate alternative to big government is a thriving, flourishing nation of cooperative communities where your success depends on the quality of your service. It's a free enterprise economy where everyone works for everyone else, competing to see who can figure out the best way to help the most people. And it's a voluntary civil society where free individuals come together voluntarily to meet each other's needs, to fill in the gaps, and to make sure that no one gets left behind. But this occurs among individuals in communities, not as a result of a government mandate. Yes. Despite what people may think, even some people within our own movement, conservatism has never been a vision of isolated, atomized loners. Ours is a vision of husbands and wives, of parents and children, neighbors and neighborhoods, volunteers and congregations, bosses and employees, and businesses, customers, clubs, teams, groups, associations, and friends. We, as conservatives, don't simply want smaller government. That's necessary, but it's not enough. We want bigger citizens. We want stronger neighborhoods and more heroic communities. We understand what liberals do not. That is that in America, freedom doesn't mean you're all on your own. Freedom means we're all in this together. The value we place on community is based on the value we place on the first and most important human community of them all, the family. Conservatives have argued for years, decades in fact, that the family must be at the core, at the very center of our worldview. On issues like school prayer, or the right to life, or traditional marriage, homeschooling, conservatives have said protecting the family is the single most important part of our agenda. And it is. Now, today, some critics say that times have changed. Some of them say that we have to change with them. They say that we have to reach out to people beyond our conservative base. They say we have to change the way we think and the way we talk about families. It may surprise you to hear me say this, but I think they make a great point. Times have changed. We do need to broaden our appeal, and we need to change the way that we talk about the family. But ultimately, the critics have it exactly backwards. The problem is not that conservatives have focused too much on the family, but far too little. For the rapid changes that we've seen in recent years in America have only made the family more important, not less. The family is the foundation not only of our society, but also of our economy, our culture, and our Republican form of government as well. The family is indivisible from any other facet of America's history or its destiny. Crises like divorce, fatherlessness, and social isolation, while moral in nature, have enormous social and economic consequences. In the same way, economic problems like unequal opportunity, stagnant wages, and the spiraling costs of housing, healthcare, and education represent moral threats to family stability and to our national success. Working families today are bearing the brunt of all of these things. And as a result, far too many are falling behind. Abraham Lincoln explained that the role of government should be for every citizen at every stage of life, something encompassed by the following statement. He said that the purpose of it is to lift artificial weights from all shoulders, to clear the paths of laudable pursuit for all, to afford all an unfettered start and a fair chance in the race of life. Lincoln's insight offers an almost perfect distillation of what America and what the Republican Party is at its best and what they stand for. Equal opportunity for all to pursue happiness. Today, this foundational American ideal is hanging, as it were, by a thread. Up and down American society, which used to be defined and driven by what Alexis de Tocqueville called our yearning desire to rise, we find a new and very unnatural stagnancy. We find the underprivileged trapped in poverty, sometimes for generations. We find a middle class caught on a treadmill, running even harder every single year just to maintain the economic security and social cohesion that were once taken for granted. Meanwhile, at the top of our society, we find a political and economic elite that, having reached the very highest rungs, has pulled up the ladder behind itself, denying others the chance even to climb. From Wall Street to K Street to Pennsylvania Avenue, we find special interest increasingly exempted and insulated, by law no less, from the rigors of competition and the consequences of their own mistakes. All of this points to what really is an inequality crisis in America today. A crisis not of unequal wealth or of unequal income, but of unequal opportunity. Progressives, from the president on down, say that inequality in America today is the failure of the free market, resulting somehow from insufficient government intervention. We know better, because if you look closely, you start to notice the opposite is true. Today, many of Lincoln's artificial weights and obstacles blocking these paths of laudable pursuit are themselves dysfunctional government policies. It is government policies, after all, that trap poor children in rotten schools, that trap poor families in broken neighborhoods, that penalize single parents for getting raises or getting jobs or getting married. It's government policies that inflate costs and limit access to quality schools and health care, that hamstring badly needed innovation in higher education, and penalize parents' investment in their own children. This opportunity crisis is absolutely real. Sadly, it's just as real as the liberals' flawed, seductive, big government proposals to create their version of opportunity. It's not enough for us as conservatives simply to oppose the liberals' ideas. We have to propose conservative ones. True victory for values voters may be found a little ways down that road less traveled, but it's long past time for conservatives to take it. Our movement is at its very best when we take on big, big challenges. And the great challenge of our time is the challenge of the forgotten family. The honest, noble parents across the country just trying to make ends meet in a society, in an economy, and a democracy that seems increasingly rigged by Washington against them and against their children. It's time for a new conservative reform agenda that levels the playing field and finally meets the challenges facing working families, to give underprivileged families a fair chance to work their way into the middle class, to give families struggling to stay in the middle class their fair chance to make a good living and build a good life, to make it easier for couples to start families, for entrepreneurs to start businesses, and volunteers to start civic and charitable organizations, to help all Americans at every step along the path to success to overcome the obstacles that big government, even the big government based in this town, a better chance for opportunity. It's time for a new approach to taxes, to not only lower rates to spur economic opportunity, but also to eliminate tax discrimination against parents and against families. I'm working on a bill designed to do just that. It's time for a new approach to education, to break up the special interest cartels that hold back our young children and our young adults. Education is itself opportunity, and government has no business telling students where they can and cannot go to get it. It's time for a new, more bold approach to transportation. You see, because new roads mean new neighborhoods, new communities, new jobs, new families, and new opportunities. Yet today, infrastructure money that states could be and should be spending on those opportunities, Washington takes and instead spends on bureaucratic waste and on special interest giveaways. It's time to rethink our dysfunctional welfare system that holds poor families down. And it's time to reform a corrupt corporate welfare system that props big businesses up. We need to find new ways, conservative ways, that rely on free enterprise and institutions of civil society to help young couples, to get married, afford a home, raise and educate their kids, get good health care, take care of their elderly parents, and retire with security themselves. Our movement has always identified with those Americans who, through hard work and determination, have climbed that ladder of success, and we always should. But our ideals demand that we identify even more with those Americans who are still on the bottom rungs, where the climbing is harder, more dangerous, and far more lonely. We need to stand up for those Americans that no one else will. For the unborn child in the womb. For the poor student caught in the failing school, for the reformed father languishing in prison, and the fatherless son facing alone the dangers of the street, for the single mom who's working 2 jobs but is still ensnared in big government poverty traps, for the elderly and for the disabled, dehumanized by big Washington, D.C. government bureaucracy, and for the splintering neighborhoods that desperately need all of these people. These families, these moms and dads, these grandparents and kids, they're waiting for us. They know that more government is not the answer. They know government only divides them. But they also know that too often, our party has ignored them. That has to change, and it has to change today. It has to change right now, because every hour, every day, big government leaves more and more American families behind. It's time for conservatives to remember those forgotten families, in word and in deed, in our hearts and in our political agenda. It's time to remember that the most audacious entrepreneurs in America are not high-tech CEOs in Silicon Valley or New York City. They're a young couple at a church back home saying, "I do." Amen. It's time to remember that the most important investments in our nation's future are not issued on Wall Street, but they're sleeping in their mother's arms at the maternity unit of your local hospital. To be truly pro-growth and pro-opportunity, our agenda must be truly pro-family. And that means we have to be pro-family, not just on some of the issues, but on all of them. I believe that if conservatives look anew to the challenges facing the American family, we will quickly discover opportunities to meet, united and undaunted, the challenges facing our movement, our economy, and our nation. Building a new conservative agenda of reform around these moms and dads and kids, remembering America's values, and especially America's forgotten families, is the path to restoring the greatness of our nation. And if, at long last, conservatives finally take that road less traveled, it will make all the difference. Thank you for all you do. May Almighty God, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America.